The sun of Madrid filtered through the heavy crimson velvet curtains of the royal palace, casting faint golden rays across the marble floor. In the east wing where the royal chambers were located, an unusual silence had settled over the normally bustling corridors. Servants tiptoed, exchanging worried glances, while the guards stood more rigid than usual. In the main chamber, Queen Isabel of Bourbon and Medici lay, exhausted on silk sheets, her face pale as wax, with strands of black hair clinging to her sweat-soaked forehead. At her side, King Philip. His expression grim, gazed at the small bundle held cautiously by a wet nurse. His Majesty Isabel announced the royal physician, Don Francisco de Quevedo, his voice attempting to convey enthusiasm, but failing to mask a certain unease. The king approached slowly. This was his fifth child, but the first who seemed to have a chance of surviving beyond infancy. The others had succumbed to various illnesses before their third year, plunging the Spanish court into constant anxiety over the succession. "Let me see him," Philip ordered, extending his arms. The wet nurse hesitated for a moment, a gesture that did not go unnoticed by the monarch, before handing over the newborn. As soon as the little prince was in his father's arms, something strange happened. The king frowned, bringing his nose closer to the baby wrapped in fine fabrics embroidered with golden threads. "What is that smell?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The royal physician approached cautiously. "Your Majesty, we have bathed the prince with the finest oils and ointments." "It's not that," Philip interrupted. "It's something different." At that moment, the Duchess of Medina, Doña Luisa de Guzman, who had assisted at the birth as the Queen's lady-in-waiting, stepped forward. At over 60 years old, having witnessed the births of dozens of nobles, she was known for her bluntness. "It is the smell of death, Your Majesty," she said in a low but firm voice. "I have smelled it before on battlefields and in homes visited by the plague." A sepulchral silence fell over the room. The Queen, still weak, sobbed softly. The king, his face now pale, returned the baby to the wet nurse with mechanical movements. "Let no one, absolutely no one outside this room know of this," he ordered sharply. "Prince Carlos Baltazar will be presented to the court in 3 days, as is tradition. In the meantime, I want the kingdom's best physicians to examine him, and you, Francisco, do not leave his side for a moment." The royal physician nodded, though his expression betrayed deep concern. There was something unnatural about the infant, but he dared not voice it in front of the king. 3 weeks later, in the king's private study, Don Francisco presented his report to a small group: the monarch, his personal advisor, the Count Duke of Olivares, and surprisingly, a foreign visitor, Dr. Heinrich von Leyden, personal physician to the Austrian emperor, and a distant relative of the Spanish royal family. "Your Majesty, we have thoroughly examined the prince." Don Francisco began, avoiding the king's eyes. "His physical development appears normal for a newborn, though he exhibits an unusual pallor. He feeds well, cries vigorously, but the smell persists, even intensifying at times." "And what does science say about this?" asked the Count Duke, a shrewd and pragmatic man who had been the king's right hand for decades. "Modern science has no explanation, my lord," Francisco replied. "I have consulted every medical treatise available, from Galen to the latest studies from the University of Salamanca. There is no record of a similar case." The king rose from his seat and walked to the window overlooking the palace gardens. In the distance, he could see nobles strolling, oblivious to the crisis unfolding behind the stone walls. "And you, Dr. von Leyden, have you seen anything like this in your years of practice?" The Austrian physician, a thin man with piercing blue eyes and a neatly trimmed white beard, cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, I have treated European nobility for 40 years, including many members of your family. What afflicts Prince Carlos is something I have observed, though never so pronounced in other branches of the Habsburgs." The silence that followed was so thick it could be cut. Everyone in the room understood the implications. Intermarriage among close relatives had been a common practice in European royalty, especially among the Habsburgs, to preserve blood purity and consolidate political alliances. "Continue," the king ordered, his voice betraying a mix of fear and resignation. "I call it genetic necrosis," Your Majesty, von Leyden said. "It is as if the body is partially dead from birth. The tissues deteriorate more rapidly than in normal individuals. I have observed similar symptoms in the Austrian archdukes, though in them it manifests differently: deformed jaws, mental disorders, inability to produce healthy heirs." "Are you saying my son is doomed?" Philip interrupted, his voice barely audible. Von Leyden met the king's gaze with professional dignity. Not exactly, your majesty. The prince may live many years, even reach adulthood, but his life will be different, and it is likely the smell will never fade. And there is no cure. Nothing medicine can do, asked the Count Duke. Current medicine, von Leyden replied, offers no cure. But there are treatments, special baths, specific diets, certain exercises that could strengthen his constitution. The king turned to face the group, his face a mask of determination. Then we will do everything possible. And in the meantime, no one, absolutely no one outside this room, must know the true nature of the prince's condition. Olivares devised an explanation for the court, something about a special perfume the prince must use for ceremonial reasons. Yes, your majesty, the Count Duke nodded. And you, Dr. von Leyden, I offer you double your current salary to remain in Madrid as the prince's personal physician. The Austrian bowed his head. It is an honor, your majesty, but I must consult with the emperor. I will send a personal letter requesting your services, Philip replied. This goes beyond politics. The survival of our dynasty is at stake. 5 kilometers from the royal palace in the Lavapiés district, a 17-year-old girl hurried through narrow alleyways. Ana Maria Hernandez, daughter of a respected but humble apothecary, carried a carefully wrapped package. Her father had received an unusual commission to prepare a special ointment with herbs brought expressly from the New World, some so rare he had never heard of them. The royal messenger had been clear the ointment must be delivered before nightfall, and its existence kept secret. The payment was generous enough to sustain her family comfortably for months. Ana Maria turned a corner and nearly collided with a group of young nobles laughing boisterously. Among them she recognized Diego de Velázquez, the court painter's apprentice, who greeted her with a discreet nod. Ana Maria, what brings you to these parts? He asked, stepping away from his companions momentarily. My father's business, she replied instinctively, clutching the package to her chest. Diego studied her with curiosity. At 20, he was already known for his extraordinary talent and keen observation. It must be important for him to send you alone, protective as he is. Ana Maria shrugged, trying to downplay the matter. Just medicinal herbs, nothing extraordinary for the court, I suppose. They say the little prince isn't well, Diego pressed. They say he has a strange smell no perfume can mask. Ana Maria felt a chill. Her father hadn't shared details about the ointment's purpose, but now the pieces were starting to fall into place. You shouldn't listen to rumors, she replied, striving for a casual tone. I must go, it's getting late. Diego nodded, but his eyes suggested he wasn't convinced. Be careful, Ana Maria. Palace secrets can be dangerous for those who know them. With those words, the young painter rejoined his friends, leaving Ana Maria with a sense of unease. She quickened her pace, aware that what she carried might be more significant than she had imagined. At a plaza near the palace, a man dressed in simple but high-quality clothing approached her. Do you have the apothecary Hernandez's order? He asked in a low voice. Ana Maria nodded, handing over the package. The man examined it briefly before passing her a small bag that jingled with the weight of coins. Your father has served the crown well, he said. We may require more of his services in the future. As the man walked away, Ana Maria couldn't suppress her curiosity. What ailment could the prince have that required such strange treatments? And why so much secrecy? What she didn't know was that she would soon be far more entangled in the mystery than she could have ever imagined. Time passed relentlessly in the Spanish court. Prince Carlos Baltazar had reached his 6th birthday and against all odds enjoyed relatively good health for the standards of the era. Physically, he was a fragile child, but not sickly, with the characteristic Habsburg prominent chin and dark penetrating eyes that seemed to observe the world with a wisdom beyond his years. However, the smell persisted. Over the years, Dr. von Leyden had tried dozens of treatments, from ointments prepared by the apothecary Hernandez to exotic remedies brought from the farthest reaches of the Spanish Empire. Some provided temporary relief, but none offered a permanent solution. The court had adapted to this peculiarity with the discretion typical of Spanish nobility. Officially, the prince used a ceremonial perfume symbolizing his divine connection, an explanation meticulously crafted by the Count Duke of Olivares that no one dared question openly. In private, courtiers spoke of the perfumed prince and discreetly covered their noses with rosewater-soaked handkerchiefs in his presence. The young prince was not unaware of his condition. At a surprisingly early age, he began noticing the glances, the gestures, the distance kept, even by his closest tutors. With sharp intelligence, he deduced that something about him provoked rejection. At 5, during one of his daily sessions with Dr. von Leyden, he confronted the physician directly. "Why do I smell different, doctor?" he asked in a clear, firm voice seated on his small throne as the physician checked his pulse. Caught off guard, the Austrian looked at the boy with a mix of compassion and respect. After consulting with the king, they decided to tell him a simplified version of the truth. He had a unique condition unlike any other prince in Europe that caused his body to produce a distinct odor. It was neither good nor bad, simply part of who he was. Since then, Carlos had shown a curious acceptance of his situation, as if he understood the weight of the crown he would one day inherit, and saw his condition as one more burden to bear with royal dignity. For his 6th birthday, the king organized a special celebration. For the first time, the prince would participate in a public event beyond formal balcony appearances or processions where distance separated him from the people. It would be a limited audience, of course, with selected nobles and their children, but it marked an important step in integrating the future monarch into courtly life. "Are you nervous, Your Highness?" asked Maria of Austria, his principal lady-in-waiting, as she adjusted the lace collar of his blue velvet suit. Carlos shook his head. "No, Maria. I've practiced my bows and know the names of all the dukes and their children." The woman smiled tenderly. Despite his condition, or perhaps because of it, the prince had developed a remarkable dignity and composure for his age. He spent hours studying protocol history, in Latin displaying a dedication that surprised even his strictest tutors. "Do you think they'll like me?" he asked suddenly, revealing a fleeting vulnerability beneath his princely facade. Maria hesitated. "You are the Prince of Spain, the future king of the greatest empire the world has known. It's not about liking you, but respecting you." Carlos nodded, though his eyes showed he understood the evasion. "Dr. von Leyden says my condition hasn't worsened in the past year." "That's good, isn't it?" "Very good, Your Highness," Maria replied, adjusting his suit one final time. "Now remember to maintain the proper distance during greetings as we practiced." The throne room had been adorned with strategically placed fresh flowers to flood the air with their fragrance. Silver candelabras held scented candles, and the windows were open to allow air circulation. Every detail was carefully planned to minimize the perception of the prince's odor. When Carlos entered, preceded by pages announcing his arrival, the attendees bowed deeply. Among them was Ana Maria Hernandez, now a 23-year-old woman who had risen socially thanks to royal favor. Her father had passed away 2 years earlier, but she had continued the family business, specializing in the prince's treatments and earning a place as Dr. von Leyden's assistant. Ana Maria watched the young prince advance with measured steps. There was something moving in his childish dignity, the way he held his head high, despite being aware of the gazes following him. Since joining the court, she had developed a special affection for the boy, impressed by his intelligence and the strength with which he faced his condition. Protocol dictated that nobles would present their children to the prince, who would acknowledge them with a brief nod. Everything proceeded as planned until it was the turn of the Duke of Medina, Celi's son, a 7-year-old boy known for his arrogant temperament. "Your Highness," the young noble said as he bowed. "My father says you smell like the tombs of the Escorial." A collective gasp swept through the room. The Duke of Medina Kelly paled, gripping his son's shoulder tightly. "Insolent boy, apologize immediately." Carlos remained motionless, his face a mask of serenity. Then in a clear voice that resonated in the suddenly silent hall, he replied, "The tombs of the Escorial hold the kings of Spain, my ancestors. If I smell like them, it is because I carry their blood and their destiny." Ana Maria held her breath, stunned by the prince's response. Beside her, Dr. von Leyden nodded in approval. From his throne, King Philip allowed a proud smile. The rest of the ceremony passed without incident, but the exchange quickly became the talk of the palace corridors. "The prince has his father's wit and his mother's dignity," courtiers remarked with newfound respect. That night, as Ana Maria prepared the prince's nightly bath with special salts brought from Persia, Carlos watched her curiously. "Señorita Hernandez, do you also think I smell like the tombs?" he asked suddenly. Ana Maria paused, looking directly at the boy. "Your Highness, everyone has their own scent. Yours is simply different." "Unpleasant," Carlos insisted. "Different," she corrected gently. "And for me, I'm so used to it, I hardly notice it." The prince seemed to consider this idly dipping a hand into the scented water. Dr. von Leyden says my condition is hereditary. Do you know what that means? It means it comes from your ancestors, Your Highness, Anna Maria replied. And my children will smell like this too. The question, asked with childish innocence but laden with dynastic implications, left Anna Maria momentarily speechless. Medicine advances every day, Your Highness, she said at last. By the time you have children, we may have found a cure. Carlos nodded, seemingly satisfied. He removed his robe and sank into the bath, allowing Anna Maria to wash his hair with gentle practiced movements. The Medina Celi boy was cruel but honest, the prince remarked as he rinsed. I prefer honesty to whispered lies. You are wise for your age, Your Highness, Anna Maria said, surprised by his maturity. It's not wisdom, Carlos replied. It's necessity. A king cannot afford to live in ignorance, not even a king who smells of death. Those words, spoken in a child's high-pitched voice, but with an adult's gravity, stayed with Anna Maria. That night, as she returned to her quarters in the servants' wing, she made a decision. She would intensify her research, scouring ancient texts and consulting healers from across the empire if necessary. She would find a cure for the prince who smelled of death, not for the dynasty's sake, but for the boy who bore his burden with such dignity. Thousands of kilometers away in Vienna, another Habsburg faced his own genetic challenges. Archduke Leopold Wilhelm, brother of Emperor Ferdinand I and a second cousin to King Philip I of Spain, suffered from increasingly frequent episodes of madness. In a moment of lucidity, he dictated a letter to his personal secretary, addressed to His Majesty Philip I of Spain. Dear cousin, I have received news of the condition of young Prince Carlos Baltazar. Though our afflictions take different forms, we share the same blood. In my moments of mental clarity, I have devoted my studies to understanding what ails us. I have found ancient texts suggesting our condition might be alleviated through a specific ritual. I send you these pages with my most trusted messenger. They are not practices accepted by the Church, but in my desperation I have found some relief in them. Blood calls to blood. Life can renew what death corrupts. Your loyal cousin Leopold Wilhelm of Habsburg. The messenger set out from Madrid carrying documents containing forbidden knowledge, pagan rituals, thinly veiled with Christian trappings, to make them palatable to the staunchly Catholic Spanish court. Unbeknownst to them, these texts describe practices that, if discovered, could be deemed heresy by the Inquisition. The letter reached King Philip just as the royal physicians faced a new crisis. Despite all treatments, Prince Carlos's odor had suddenly intensified, coinciding with an unexplained fever that kept him bedridden. Dr. von Leyden had exhausted his resources and, for the first time in 6 years, feared for the heir's life. In his desperation, the king summoned Anna Maria to his private chambers, an unprecedented act for a woman of her station. Señorita Hernandez, Dr. von Leyden speaks highly of your skills and knowledge. The monarch set his face, showing the exhaustion of sleepless nights. My cousin, the Archduke Leopold, has sent these documents. They contain unorthodox practices. Anna Maria took the papers with trembling hands. You wish me to study them, Your Majesty. I wish you to save my son. Philip replied, his voice breaking with emotion. As a king, I cannot officially authorize these practices. As a father, I will do whatever is necessary. Anna Maria nodded, understanding the monarch's dilemma. I will study these documents immediately, Your Majesty, and if I find anything that can help the prince, I will implement it under my own responsibility. The crown will protect you. Of course, the king added, but we must be discreet. The Inquisition has eyes and ears everywhere. That night, Anna Maria locked herself in her small laboratory within the palace. The documents from the Archduke described rituals of blood renewal based on ancient Eastern European pagan practices. The basic premise was that new blood could purify corrupted blood if exchanged ceremonially under specific conditions. By candlelight, Anna Maria studied the text with a mix of scientific fascination and religious unease. As the daughter of an apothecary trained in empirical tradition, she recognized elements that might have medical merit. As a Spanish woman raised in the Catholic faith, she shuddered at the ritualistic aspects bordering on heresy. After hours of analysis, she reached a conclusion: she would adapt the procedure, eliminating pagan elements and focusing on what could have scientific basis. She would need fresh blood from a healthy donor, preferably young and unrelated to the Habsburg, mixed with specific herbs before being administered to the prince. The risk was immense. If the procedure failed, she could lose favor and face accusations of witchcraft or even attempting to harm the heir. If it succeeded, however, it could alleviate the young prince's suffering and secure the dynasty's future. With determination, Anna Maria began preparations. The chosen night for the procedure was dark and moonless, as if the sky itself wished to conceal what was about to occur in the depths of the royal palace. Anna Maria had carefully selected this date not out of superstition, but for practicality. It coincided with the absence of most courtiers who had departed for a religious celebration at the Escorial. In a small chamber adjacent to the prince's quarters, Anna Maria had set up everything needed. A white cloth-covered oak table held glass vials of herbal extracts, small silver knives, the metal least likely to interfere with blood properties, according to the Archduke's texts, and glazed ceramic containers. Dr. von Leyden observed with a grave expression as Anna Maria made final preparations. The Austrian physician had agreed to participate after much deliberation, convinced at last by the prince's deteriorating condition and the king's tacit approval. "Are you certain of this, Señorita Hernandez?" he asked quietly. "What you propose goes beyond known medicine." Anna Maria adjusted the wick of an oil lamp before replying. "I'm not certain of anything, doctor, but I've studied the Archduke's texts and removed anything that seemed mere superstition. What remains has some medical logic, however rudimentary." "And the donor?" von Leyden inquired, glancing at the closed door. "He'll arrive any moment," she replied. "I've chosen someone young, healthy, and unrelated to the royal house." As if summoned by her words, a soft knock sounded at the door. Anna Maria took a deep breath before opening it, revealing a tall, robust young man of about 20, his face partially hidden by a wide-brimmed hat. "Diego," she greeted, allowing him to enter. Diego de Velázquez, now the court's official painter and a trusted friend from Anna Maria's youth in Lavapiés, bowed respectfully to Dr. von Leyden. When Anna Maria explained the prince's situation, "I couldn't refuse," the artist said, removing his hat. "If my blood can help Spain's heir, it's a small price for the honor the crown has granted me." Von Leyden studied the young painter with a clinical eye, noting his clear, healthy, skin-agile movements and the intelligence in his eyes. "An excellent donor," he murmured, almost to himself. Anna Maria explained the procedure with methodical calm, as if describing the preparation of a common medicine, rather than a ritual adapted from forbidden texts. "I'll extract a small amount of blood from your arm, Diego. I'll mix it with these extracts and administer it to the prince through a superficial incision in his forearm. The entire process must be completed before the blood coagulates." "Will it hurt?" asked a small voice from the door connecting to the royal quarters. The three adults turned startled. Prince Carlos, in his nightshirt and pale from fever, watched them with bright, curious eyes. "Your Highness, you should be resting," von Leyden said, quickly approaching to guide him back to bed. "I don't want to rest," the boy replied with unexpected firmness. "I want to know what you're going to do to me." Anna Maria exchanged a glance with the physician before kneeling to the prince's level. "We're going to try a new treatment, Your Highness. It's experimental, but we believe it could help with your condition." Carlos nodded as if confirming something he already knew. "Will you use blood?" he asked, pointing to the instruments on the table. "Yes, Your Highness," Anna Maria replied, opting for honesty. "A small amount of blood from Señor Velázquez mixed with medicinal herbs." The prince studied the painter with interest. "You're Velázquez, the one who painted my father on horseback?" Diego bowed. "The same, Your Highness." Carlos approached the artist with hesitant steps. "My lady says you have hands blessed by God. Perhaps your blood is too." The comment delivered with a child's innocence, but an adult's gravity, caused a momentary silence. Anna Maria felt a chill. In a way, the prince had grasped the essence of what they were attempting, a transfer, not just of blood, but of vitality, of health, almost like a blessing. "Well," Dr. von Leyden said, regaining his professional composure, "if His Highness is awake, it may be best to proceed now. The fever has subsided temporarily, which is favorable." The prince was settled into a cushioned armchair, strategically arranged to support his fragile frame. Diego sat on a stool beside him, rolling up his sleeve to expose his arm. Anna Maria worked with precision, heating the instruments over a candle flame to purify them as her father had taught her. You'll feel a pinch, Senor Velasquez, she warned, applying a mixture of alcohol and herbs to clean the painter's skin. Diego nodded, his eyes fixed on the process. As an artist, he had a natural interest in technical procedures, even those far removed from his own discipline. Ana Maria made a clean incision in the painter's forearm, collecting the blood in a small ceramic bowl. She added drops of various herbal mixtures, mentally reciting the proportions she had studied. Meanwhile, Dr. von Leyden prepared the prince's arm, explaining each step in a soothing voice to keep him calm. "Does it hurt a lot?" Carlos asked Diego, watching the blood flow. "No more than a scratch, Your Highness," the painter replied with an encouraging smile. "I've suffered worse mixing pigments for your father." This amused the prince, who nodded as if they shared a secret. When the mixture was ready, Ana Maria warmed it slightly over the oil lamp. The liquid, now a darker red with a peculiar sheen, gave off an aroma that partially countered the prince's characteristic odor. "We're ready, Your Highness," she announced, approaching, with the bowl and a small silver knife. Carlos extended his arm without hesitation, his trust moving those present. Ana Maria made a superficial incision, just enough to draw a few drops of blood, and applied the mixture directly to the wound, allowing the bloods to mingle. Von Leyden watched with clinical focus, while Diego, now bandaged, observed with the intense gaze he used when studying a subject for a portrait. "Now we wait," Ana Maria said, carefully bandaging the prince's arm. The next hours passed in tense vigil. Surprisingly, the prince showed no immediate discomfort and soon fell into a deep sleep. Von Leyden monitored his vitals constantly, while Ana Maria prepared infusions to keep everyone alert. "It's fascinating," Diego commented, quietly sitting by the window, where he sketched in a small notebook. "In my art, I mix pigments to create something new. You've mixed blood seeking the same effect. The comparison is poetic but imprecise," Von Leyden replied with a faint smile. "The human body is far more complex than any canvas, and far more mysterious," Ana Maria added, watching the sleeping prince. "What we're doing is as much faith as science." At that moment, Carlos stirred in his sleep, murmuring unintelligible words. The three adults tensed, prepared for any adverse reaction. But when the prince opened his eyes, there was a clarity in them not seen in weeks. "I'm hungry," he declared, simply sitting up with more energy than he had shown in days. Von Leyden quickly checked his forehead. "The fever is gone," he announced with barely concealed astonishment. Ana Maria approached, noticing something even more extraordinary. "The smell has diminished significantly." The three exchanged looks of cautious hope. Could the procedure have worked, or was this merely another temporary improvement? The following weeks confirmed the impossible. The treatment had a significant effect. The prince's characteristic odor, though not entirely gone, was reduced to a level easily masked by conventional perfumes. His overall health improved markedly, showing a vigor that surprised even the most optimistic. King Philip, informed of the success, summoned Ana Maria to a private audience. The young apothecary, now elevated to the specially created role of special physician to His Highness, presented herself with her characteristic modesty. "You have achieved what Europe's best physicians deemed impossible," the king declared, studying her intently. "The Spanish crown is in your debt. I only applied knowledge others discovered before me." "Your Majesty," Ana Maria replied, bowing her head. "The credit also belongs to Dr. von Leyden and Senor Velasquez. Velasquez will receive additional commissions and a pension increase," the king stated. "Von Leyden has been appropriately rewarded. As for you," Philip paused, choosing his words, "I understand the treatment must be repeated periodically." "Yes, Your Majesty. Our observations suggest the effects last about a month before the odor begins to intensify again." The king nodded, as if this confirmed his own conclusions. "Then your presence at court will be needed indefinitely. I will grant you a minor noble title to ease your position and quell gossip. Countess of Lavapiés, does that sound fitting?" Ana Maria suppressed her surprise. A noble title was something she, the daughter of a simple apothecary, had never imagined. "It is an undeserved honor, Your Majesty." On the contrary, the king replied, "it is barely sufficient for ensuring the dynasty's continuity," he added with a near imperceptible smile. "My son holds you in high esteem. He asks for you constantly." This didn't surprise Ana Maria. Since the procedure, she had formed a special bond with the young prince, who sought her not only for treatments, but for conversations about herbs, natural sciences, and even bedtime stories. In a way, she had become a maternal figure to the boy whose own mother, Queen Isabel, maintained the formal distance typical of royalty with their children. "He is an extraordinary child, Your Majesty," Anna Maria said sincerely. "His intelligence and dignity are admirable, especially given the challenges he has faced." The king seemed pleased. "When Carlos reaches maturity and fully understands his condition, he will need loyal allies, people who have known him not just as a prince, but as the boy he is now." Anna Maria understood the implicit message. Her role extended beyond providing treatments. She was becoming part of the inner circle protecting the future king. As time passed, the procedure was repeated monthly with minor variations. Diego de Velázquez remained the primary donor, also becoming an artistic mentor to the prince who showed an inclination for drawing. Dr. von Leyden oversaw each session, meticulously documenting effects and adjusting herbal mixtures as needed. By the time Carlos turned 10, the treatment was so routine that few recalled the intensity of the odor that once defined him. Courtiers attributed his improvement to natural maturation or von Leyden's conventional treatments, unaware of the secret monthly ritual. However, tranquility was disrupted by an unexpected event. During a diplomatic visit, Archduke Leopold Wilhelm, the king's cousin and author of the original documents, requested a private audience with the monarch and prince. In a secluded chamber with only von Leyden and Anna Maria present as medical advisors, the Archduke studied Carlos with an almost predatory intensity. "The blood has worked," he declared, addressing the king. "The boy has good color, and the smell is barely perceptible. My congratulations, cousin." Philip inclined his head in thanks, though his expression remained cautious. "Your documents were invaluable, Leopold. The Spanish crown is in your debt." Leopold waved dismissively. "We are family, Philip. Habsburgs must help each other survive our peculiarities." Turning to Anna Maria, he studied her curiously. "So you are the apothecary who adapted my texts. Impressive, especially for a woman." His voice lowered. "However, I suspect you omitted crucial aspects of the ritual." "I adapted the procedure to align with modern medicine, Your Excellency," Anna Maria replied firmly. "The ceremonial elements seemed unnecessary." Leopold smiled a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Rituals are never unnecessary, my dear Countess. They are the language we use to speak to forces older than our understanding." An uncomfortable silence followed. Von Leyden cleared his throat, eager to change the subject. "The prince has responded exceptionally well to the treatment he reported. His physical and intellectual development matches, even surpasses that of any child his age." "And the donor?" Leopold asked abruptly. "Is it still the same?" "Yes, Your Excellency," von Leyden replied. "The painter Velázquez has proven ideal for this purpose." The Archduke frowned. "A mistake. You should rotate donors. Blood adapts, loses efficacy." Carlos, who had remained silent, spoke suddenly. "I like Senor Velázquez's blood. It makes me feel strong." Leopold turned to the boy, studying him with renewed interest. "Of course it does, young prince. An artist's blood is full of life and creativity, but eventually you'll need something more potent." Anna Maria felt a chill at his words and the accompanying gaze. There was something deeply unsettling about the Archduke, beyond aristocratic eccentricity. That night, as she prepared herbs for the next treatment in her laboratory, Leopold Wilhelm appeared unannounced, accompanied only by a silent servant who remained at the door. "Countess," he greeted with a minimal bow. "Forgive the intrusion, but I wish to speak privately." Anna Maria tensed, aware of the impropriety, but too cautious to point it out. "How may I serve you, Your Excellency?" Leopold approached, examining the vials and preparations on her workbench. "You've done admirable work with the prince, truly admirable, but incomplete." "Incomplete," she repeated, maintaining composure. "The texts I sent included specific instructions for the full ceremony," he explained, holding a vial to the lamp's light. "Instructions you've deliberately ignored." "I adapted the procedure to acceptable medical practices, Your Excellency," Anna Maria replied firmly. "The results have been satisfactory." "Satisfactory," Leopold said with a humorless laugh. "You've suppressed the symptoms, not cured the disease. The genetic necrosis remains dormant, but not defeated." Anna Maria held his gaze. "And what would you suggest?" Leopold stepped closer, so close she could smell his oddly familiar odor, similar to the prince's, but with a sweeter undertone. "The painter's blood has served so far," he said in a near whisper. "But for a true cure, you need more special blood, innocent blood." Anna Maria recoiled instinctively. "What are you suggesting, Your Excellency. Nothing that hasn't been done before for our dynasty's survival, Leopold replied with eerie calm. A small sacrifice for a greater good. The blood of a child offered willingly by its parents for wealth and titles could cure the prince permanently. The horror Anna Maria felt must have shown, for Leopold smiled indulgently. I see the idea disturbs you. You are young and don't yet understand the needs of great lineages. But think, Countess, a single sacrifice to secure Spain's and Europe's future. I would never participate in such a thing, Anna Maria said, her voice trembling with indignation. And His Majesty would never allow it. Are you certain? Leopold asked, raising an eyebrow. Philip is a king, but also a desperate father. Kings have done worse for their heirs. Before Anna Maria could respond, the door burst open. Diego de Velázquez, pale but resolute, entered with 2 royal guards. His Majesty requests your presence immediately. Your Excellency, the painter announced with tense formality. Leopold studied the newcomers impassively. Of course, we mustn't keep my royal cousin waiting. As the Archduke left with the guards, Diego approached Anna Maria. Are you all right? He asked quietly, dropping formal protocol. Anna Maria nodded, though her hands still trembled. How did you know? The Prince Diego replied. The Archduke spoke to him after the meeting. Carlos didn't understand everything, but enough to be alarmed. He came to me immediately. This revelation stunned Anna Maria. The young prince whom everyone sought to protect had protected her. We must speak to the king, she decided. The Archduke's suggestions are monstrous. Diego nodded gravely. He's already informed. That's why he summoned Leopold. That night, Archduke Leopold Wilhelm left the Spanish court under an escort that felt more like a guard than an honor. The incident was never officially mentioned, but the king's grateful glances toward Anna Maria and Diego in the following days spoke volumes. What none could imagine was that this episode, seemingly resolved, would have consequences far beyond the palace walls, affecting not only the future of the prince who smelled of death, but the very destiny of the Habsburg dynasty in Spain. 2 years later, as Carlos celebrated his 12th birthday, a new challenge emerged. Diego de Velázquez, after years as a regular donor, began showing signs of weakening, not severe, but enough for Dr. von Leyden to express concern. The constant blood extractions are affecting his health, the physician explained to Anna Maria as they reviewed the latest treatment results. We need to find an alternative or complementary donor. The Archduke suggested rotating donors, Anna Maria recalled reluctantly. Though his motives were questionable, he may have been right about that. The problem, von Leyden replied, is finding someone suitable, healthy, unrelated to the Habsburgs, and absolutely trustworthy. Anna Maria considered the issue in silence. The solution was obvious, though neither dared voice it. Finally, she spoke. I could be the alternative donor. Von Leyden studied her for a long moment. It's a possibility I'd considered. Your health is excellent and you're certainly trustworthy. However, I'm a woman, Anna Maria finished with an ironic smile. That doesn't concern me medically, the doctor clarified. But it could complicate matters at court. You know how rumors are. Anna Maria understood perfectly. As an unmarried woman spending significant time with the prince, she was already the subject of speculation, despite her title and official role. The prince's health is paramount, she decided. I'll speak to His Majesty myself. King Philip, upon hearing the proposal, was pragmatic. If Dr. von Leyden approves it medically, I see no objection. As for rumors, there will be gossip regardless of what we do. The crown will protect you as always. Thus began a new phase in the prince's treatment. Diego remained the primary donor, but Anna Maria contributed regularly, allowing the painter to recover between sessions. Surprisingly, this combination seemed even more effective, with Carlos's health and vigor reaching unprecedented levels. Now, on the cusp of adolescence, the prince developed a complex and fascinating personality. He retained the dignity and composure of his childhood, but displayed a voracious intellectual curiosity and genuine interest in the arts and sciences. Under Velázquez's tutelage, he progressed remarkably in drawing and painting, while Anna Maria's lessons in botany and natural medicine complemented his formal education. In private, Carlos began referring to them as his true family, a comment that, if overheard by less discreet ears, would have caused a scandal. For the young prince, the bond formed through years of treatments and intimate conversations was more meaningful than the formal, distant relationships he maintained with most royals. One day, as Anna Maria prepared an infusion in the small laboratory now permanently set up in the prince's wing, Carlos entered unannounced, a habit that had become common. "Have you ever wondered if we are truly who we think we are?" he asked without preamble, sitting on a stool across from her. Anna Maria looked at him curiously. At 12, Carlos was still slight, but had shed his childhood fragility. His face, with the distinctive Habsburg chin, showed a maturity beyond his years. "That's a profound question, Your Highness. What brought it on?" Carlos toyed with an empty vial. "I've been reading about blood, how it carries the essence of who we are. You and Diego have been giving me your blood for years. Doesn't that mean I'm partly you now?" Anna Maria felt a chill at the insight. They had never openly discussed the philosophical or spiritual implications of the treatment. "Blood carries nutrients and oxygen." "Your Highness," she replied carefully. "It's vital for life, but it doesn't define who we are. Your character, thoughts, and decisions, that's what makes you you." "But I used to smell of death," Carlos insisted with a child's bluntness. "Now I smell different, better, as if death has moved away from me. Doesn't that mean I've changed fundamentally?" Anna Maria considered her response. The prince deserved honesty. "You've changed physically, yes. The treatment has altered aspects of your constitution. But your essence, what makes you Carlos Baltazar of Habsburg, remains intact." The prince seemed to ponder this. "Sometimes I dream of places I've never been. Workshops full of canvases and paints, or gardens with herbs I can name, though I've never studied them. Are those your memories seeping into me?" This confession left Anna Maria speechless. The Archduke's text had mentioned the possibility of essence transfer, but she had dismissed it as superstition. Could there be some truth to it? "Dreams are mysterious, Your Highness," she said finally. "Our minds weave fragments of what we see, hear, and experience into images that feel like memories." Carlos looked at her with an intensity almost unsettling in one so young. "You're not answering my question. I'm asking if I'm partly you and Diego now." Anna Maria met his gaze. "If you're asking whether the treatment has created a special bond between us, the answer is yes. But not because you're less yourself, because we've contributed to your health and well-being in a unique way." This seemed to satisfy the prince, who nodded slowly. "I like that answer. It means I'll never be truly alone, even when I'm king, and everyone bows to me, but no one speaks honestly." Those words, spoken with simplicity but laden with premature wisdom and loneliness, deeply moved Anna Maria. The boy who smelled of death from birth had grown to understand the burdens of his royal destiny with a clarity few adults could match. "You'll always have people who speak honestly to you, Your Highness," she promised impulsively, taking his hand. "Diego and I will be by your side as long as you need us." Carlos smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his youthful face. "I know. It's the one thing I'm completely certain of in this world of masks and lies." That moment of sincere connection became a turning point for Anna Maria. The treatment, begun as a desperate attempt to save a sickly prince, had evolved into something far greater. It had forged bonds that transcended class and protocol, creating an alliance that would shape not only the prince's future, but that of Spain itself. What none could foresee was that these bonds would soon be tested in ways not even the Archduke's forbidden texts had anticipated.